are the Highlands, the Scottish Highlands. A land for wildlife, for the deer, the grouse, the hare, and in even lonelier places, the golden eagle. A land of few people, but hardy ones. And wherever you go about the world, you will meet folk whose forefathers were men of these mountains and of these glens. The magic of this, their true country, always stays with them and calls for their return. It calls too to all those who seek a new vision at the edge of a world. For all of them, the road best to travel is one which goes north and west. These are the roads of the far horizons, the roads that have no end. Take any one of half a dozen routes going north out of England and you arrive in Scotland. Over the border you find yourself first in the lowland hills, and then soon in the thickly populated Midland Plain, with Glasgow in the west and Edinburgh in the east. These two cities stand at the entrance to the Highlands. Edinburgh's commanding position between lowland and highland and its easy sea routes to the European continent have made it the centre of many past struggles. The ancient castle, home of Mary Queen of Scots and many more of our sovereigns, is built on the rock which has looked down for century after century on the coming and going of adventurers. Pictish tribes, Roman garrisons, Danish pirates, Saxon kings and Norman merchants. Nowadays it sees voyagers of a different kind. Every year now, more and more of our exiles cross the border and come back visiting along the Highland Road, the road upon which they or their ancestors set out in former days. Along with them come many who claim no kinship of blood with Scotland, but who perhaps have something of the exile in them too. For them, it is the beginning of their adventure. Back along the roads to the hills. Roads trodden out by drovers bringing their cattle to the rich southern markets. Roads which have known the march of Scottish army against Scot, Scottish army against English, and away on the coasts, Scottish army against Viking. For 200 miles, working its way by narrow glens and over mountain passes, over lonely moors and by rich forests, the road strikes through to the Atlantic Ocean, to the islands of our north and west. Villages of whitewashed houses by a burnside with the mountains leaning over mark where people have stayed since the first clan tales were told, pausing while they refresh themselves at the gateways to the Highland passes. Here at Killin, travellers have always found hospitality and rest after their climb from the lowland plain. Out of Edinburgh, even in the first few miles, the countryside changes rapidly. Beyond Stirling, the mountains rise sharply to form a natural barrier. Both road and rail push through gorges so narrow there is hardly room for both tracks. Side by side they run from Killin to Bridge of Orchy, where the road goes directly to the west, leaving the railway to find a lonely way to the north, across the moor of Rannoch. The most desolate moor in all Scotland. A mysterious place, abandoned to the sheep and deer, with hill lochans repeating the sky. A famous road cuts it, making for the sea by way of Glencoe. Glencoe. There was a slaughter of innocents here once, more than 2.5 centuries ago. The MacDonalds have never forgotten, and the Campbells have never been forgiven. But the present is here too. Glencoe village is now best known as a mountaineering centre. From here you can set out to climb rock faces like those of Buccleuch, whose 3,000 feet can test even the toughest of mountaineers, although it is not perhaps so much toughness of the body as of the mind, and the pleasure that the climber finds is in his aloneness with nature and the knowledge of his power over it, the feeling shared by the crofter and the fisherman and all others in this country who gain a living in a contest with nature. You reach the summit, and away to the horizon you are challenged again by peak upon peak. Above all, to the north, Ben Nevis, with his feet in the sea at Loch Linnhe, thrusts his mighty forehead into the clouds. Ben Nevis guards the entrance to the Great Glen of Scotland, a geological crack that cuts the Highlands in two. 3 lochs lie in a chain along the glen. From coast to coast, for 50 miles from the Atlantic to the North Sea, the Great Glen slashes Scotland apart. Long before history, the first men who crossed Scotland came this way, through a jungle of forests and portaging their boats between the lochs. Today, the Caledonian Canal links them together, and boats now climb up and down across country from one sea to the other. Coastal fishermen, who make up one of our great industries, often take this way, for it saves them a long, wild passage round Cape Wrath in the north. These are men from the Western Isles. Now, after a season in the North Sea, they are on their way west and home. Going north and west again by land, there is a mountain road to the sea. Out of the Great Glen into Glengarry, over the mountain passes of Clooney and Glen Shiel, it swoops down to the coast at Loch Alsh, to the shores of the Isle of Skye. From Argyll north to here, this area was anciently all that the Scots possessed of Scotland. In this sparsely peopled land, still only a few painfully engineered roads run through the mountains. Mountains which, in their isolation 200 years ago, sheltered bonny Prince Charlie. Defeated and deserted, a king's ransom on his head for blood money, he was never betrayed. Lonely places nowadays, with their folk scattered. MacDonalds, McRaes, McLennans. Then the hills ease out. There's a little space even for a croft or two, and a hardy living to be won from the indifferent earth. On the coast, the glens dip below the sea to make long fjords that stab all the western edge of Scotland. Here the ocean comes to the door like another highway, and men have had to learn to live on terms with both the sea and the land. They can take treasure from both if they have patience and the ancient slow skills. The salmon passes by here on his way to the mountain rivers. Even to spot him demands long experience, and to net him is a job for a team that knows how to wait and then to work together. This land of wind and water, of mountain and hard-won pasture, throughout its history has bred a vigorous people. Where the tides make patterns as they come in past the Isle of Skye, men once kept watch for the raiding galleys of the Vikings. On the road here you start to smell the tangle of the isles, the sea wrack drying in the sun. Castles built at the water's edge mark the rallying places of the clans during centuries of feud and invasion. For the last few miles, the peaks of Skye rise out of the sea. It's the first of our 1,000 islands, and many say the best. And if you have any MacDonald or MacLeod blood in you, your heart surely beats a little faster here. The road takes to the sea at the half-mile strait of Kyle of Lochalsh, and the mainland of Scotland runs away to what men once thought was the edge of the world. No one can reach Skye or any of our western islands without crossing a part of the Atlantic Ocean. Even cars and buses take ship for the Isles. Steamers go further north to the harbour of Portree, but the Kyle crossing is the chief entry for those who come by road. Kyleakin, the first township of Skye, is called after the 13th century King Haakon of Norway. Through here passes all the road traffic bound for the island's capital, Portree. But there's another way there. Below Ben Nevis, where the road went inland from the Great Glen, another route runs towards the Western Sea. It finds a new road to the Atlantic shore. We call it the West Highland Line. Mallaig, the terminus of the line, is a town which grew up with the railway and has now become the chief herring fishing port of the Western Highlands. So the mainland ends again, but the traveller can voyage on to the far island harbours of Lewis, Barra and Rum, of Egg, Canna and Benbecula, and nearest, but in some ways richest, Skye. Skye, a place of silence and mist, where peaks suddenly snatch clouds out of nowhere to cover their jagged heads. And people who live here for a time also learn to sit and to ponder the long secrets. But the apartness of the Western Isles has led in the past to much neglect, so that clansmen in great numbers were forced to leave these hills of home and follow strange new roads. The ancestors of many a one in America and Canada and elsewhere about the world lie here. But the old road still runs, welcoming as ever. Deep bays and fjords give a ragged edge to the coast. Ships have to come far inland to port, but the harbour thus gained is the quieter and the more secure. For the travellers, it is almost the end of their journey. For them, an evening arrival with time to think of all the small explorations of tomorrow, the places to visit, the people to meet, and perhaps a new tongue to hear in a friendly land. For us of the island, it's a great event when the steamer arrives. Portree is the centre of the island's transport, and we have an interest in every person and everything that comes off and goes on that boat. We'll know everyone who steps ashore, or we can find out about those we don't know. There may be some goods we ordered coming to land, or some of our produce going aboard. There will be mails anyway, plenty of them, for Highland people, the scattered folk, get letters from their kin in every country. Things to eat, things to wear, things to cook with, to work with, to help make life less primitive. The modern world brings slow change to these places, and there will be happy changes if the new does not displace the proud old virtues. Whatever improvements come with better transport, electricity, and the progress of science, life here is simple at the roots. A man lives by what his hands can do, his chief partner often his dog. Away from the broken ground of mountain and bog are rich small fields, and it is upon these, with good husbandry, that the crofter of the far west makes his living. basis of it all is the sea and the land, boats on the shore, beasts on the hill, our own roots well into the ground, and always the hope that the plough will turn a little more than our fathers managed. These are the highlands and the islands that the visitor comes to see. Skye is only the first of the islands. The rest lie away yonder to the horizon, many more of them, and they are easy to reach. Our old legend tells of an Isle of Youth away beyond the edge of the sea, a land of heart's desire where no one ever grows old. It's there to find.